One of the things that I've tried to explain to people is how Caleb Maupin is dog whistling a kind of anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. In his talk with Dugan, he essentially does just that. He specifically refers to a group of international bankers who don't have America's best interest at heart. Well, you see, that's kind of vague, and that's not very Marxist at all. Criticizing capitalism is a little bit more complicated than that. Well, the international bankers are doing whatever it is that is profitable for them. They are not specifically looking to screw America and its interests. Many of those bankers are, in fact, very much American and are making profits on Wall Street and many of the large stock exchanges around the world. To say that the rich are against America is nonsense. But you see the trick he's pulling here. A good America is that, Norman Rockwell, middle class, bullshit that never actually existed vision that Maupin has. And if they don't support that, or they're not doing that, then they're not doing what's best for America. Even though that's not really the point. But you see what I mean. They've gone from saying, okay, they're against America because they're not carrying out my vision of America and not the vision of what America actually is and what has always been, which is what they're actually doing. That is very much deeply rooted in the anti-Semitic conspiracy theory of Jewish bankers looking to control people and particularly control America because Americans are horribly addicted to thinking they're victims of a conspiracy. I mean, the persecution complex on Americans is astronomical. Right from the right all the way to the left in the history of the U.S., it's bad. And it's something that Americans can't see because they're so saturated by it. But you see, when he's saying there's a group of international bankers, which is a very blatant dog whistle to anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, has Dugan nodding along with it. Do you think Dugan just simply thinks, oh, capitalism is bad because internal contradictions that, and theories that he doesn't even understand? I guarantee you he doesn't know anything about Marxist theory. But he's nodding along with the international banker conspiracy, which completely has its roots in anti-Semitism. Now consider Maupin's previous book, which I have defended, Satan at the Fountainhead, talking about how essentially U.S. interests have been overthrown by the Israeli lobby and Israel is secretly controlling the United States, essentially saying that without any shred of evidence whatsoever. I had always been under the impression that the book was about Israeli interests investing in the U.S. defense industry. Okay, well, yeah, I would believe that. I believe billionaires from many countries are investing in the U.S. weapons manufacturing industry. It's incredibly profitable. Of course they are. But the part where he's alleging that essentially U.S. interests were blocked or overthrown by the Israeli lobby is where you are getting into that anti-Semitic conspiracy theory mindset. So you see how this plays out and how it's not immediately apparent until you start asking for definitions of certain phenomena. And that's another problem with Caleb Maupin. Ask him to define things and he gives you like these ridiculous definitions that no one uses, that he himself invented. Socialism is when you literally do the opposite of socialism, but it's okay because China did it. I've even read a stupid PhD thesis, which claimed that Chinese exporting of capital isn't imperialism because it's doing it before the U.S. is. That was essentially it. Chinese imperialism is not imperialism because it's doing it before the U.S. can. And this was something that was expected to be taken seriously. I mean, this is the best example of a logical fallacy that I could think of. When you start extending this into everything else, Maupin is saying like, oh, Jesus would want us to be socialists. Okay, well, for about 2,000 years now, a lot of people have been telling us what Jesus would have wanted. And we haven't heard anything from the horse's mouth. We have the Bible, which has been notoriously written, rewritten, edited, had pieces taken out, pieces put back in, to the point where literally King James can just rewrite the Bible and then everybody thinks it's somehow valid. Well, if a despotic ruler wrote your holy book, you really think that's the word of God? Well, here's another problem. Aside from it being completely unreliable, what is actually in the Bible and what is actually not in the Bible, or what the interpretation of something in the Bible is or not, thanks largely not just due to translations, but to powerful interests who change it in order to fit their narrative. And one of those being the Catholic Church, who's a very large culprit of that. When someone tells you that God would want you to be a certain ideology or in a certain group, that should immediately raise the wrong kind of red flags for you. When someone starts telling you, this is God's way, so you should do it too, that's a cult. I'm religious myself, but nowhere in my religion does it say, take your ideas and ram them down other people's throats and force them to convert if necessary, or you would only have this political ideology because it's allegedly compatible with it, etc. I mean, Marxism specifically rejects anti-materialism. Marxism specifically rejects idealism, which is what religion is. Anybody can claim God said anything. So what? Joel Osteen said God wanted me to send him $100. Somebody objectively proved to me that Caleb is right and Osteen is wrong. I don't know, I kind of see the same grift going on. I'm sorry, the CPI and this whole ideology is a cult, whether you like it or not. If you think your God told you to be a specific political ideology, you're a liar. Because God didn't. God didn't tell anyone anything. You haven't heard anything from the horse's mouth. You've heard things from thousands of years ago that have been reinterpreted, translated, recycled, and deliberately, with malicious intent, edited. Jesus didn't say be a Marxist, which you could not say that Caleb Maupin is even a Marxist. No, he's not. That would be rejecting idealism, not embracing it wholeheartedly and then claiming God is on your side, like, frankly, what would be considered a psychopath. If goddamn Joel Osteen or Pat Robertson walked in and said, God wants you to vote for me for president because God says so, you'd laugh at him like a nut job. But somehow, because it's confirming your already held biases towards Marxism, people suddenly think that that's possible. Anybody who tells you they have a divine right is lying. And even if you did believe it, there would be no way of objectively proving that to be true. If we all have to be a Maupinite because that's what God would want, that's not really democracy now, is it? It's Maupin putting himself on a pedestal. This is what God would want, and I'm the leader of what God would want, so I have divine right, is essentially what Maupin is saying. And when some leader comes to you saying that they have some divine right to rule, they're either a medieval feudal king, emperor, or they're a cult. And that's why I think the CPI is a cult. Because they're not telling you, based on a scientific analysis of capitalism and how it works, is why you should be a Marxist and would fight for your class. He's telling you God is on your side. God will support you if you do it. Like I said, God can allegedly tell you to do just about anything. You can't prove anything God actually said. And that's part of what makes this all very creepy and Very, very American. Because if we were to take Maupin at his word and his cult at their word, you cannot appeal to Americans on the material conditions, class struggle, or what the U.S. is doing to other countries around the world, or even admit to the horrific past of the United States, which they say happened, but we're not going to attack the roots of the things that led to that. We're just going to ignore that and just scream patriot until you go away. See, that's the problem. If we were to believe that, then we would assume that Maupin is saying that the American public is stupid. They can't be reasoned with. They can't be appealed to. They cannot be educated. You just have to ram the Bible and the flag at people. Be Marxist, be Marxist, be Marxist. Because you can't reach them on any kind of intellectual or class level. If that isn't deliberately saying that the American people are not just... It's saying that the American people are too stupid to think for themselves. And that if you just dangle the flag and a Bible in front of them, they'll do what you say. As opposed to third worldism says that it's largely not in the material interest of the first world to engage in revolution. And that's a whole other argument. It's not saying that they can't be reasoned with, or said it's not in their interest, so they're not going to. Whereas Caleb is just saying, yeah, you know what, the American people are just stupid animals, so let's just dangle a Bible and a flag in front of it. That's essentially what it is. Then why would he be resorting to it? Because if you don't pander to people's... I mean, let's face it. American Christianity and American nationalism in general is essentially pablum for idiots. It's giving identity to people who don't even have one. It's whiteness. And if you can't appeal to that sense of superiority that Americans have over other people, their manifest destiny, we are the greatest country in the world because of some virtue we can't define. Also, that's inextricably linked to racism, but I digress, and the whole exterminating the native population because they weren't on the same level as the Pilgrims, etc. So you see how all of this is tied together. The racism, the insult to the American people, treating them as if they're stupid children who can't learn, which last couple of years, man, I don't know, maybe that's actually true. Tying it into being anti-colonial and lying about it and saying it's supported by Jeff Bezos, even though, that has existed for like a century before Jeff Bezos was even born. And then they have to go into all this dishonesty while slandering everybody who disagrees with them, not just myself, and falsely claiming that I'm pro-imperialism because imperialism is the center of what third worldist ideology is. And that's explicitly why he would never debate me on it. He refused. I asked him 3 times to debate that before he blew up and started insulting me, etc., when we were still friends. He refused to do it. And then when I said, what the fuck, why are you saying I'm pro-imperialist? He turns around and says, oh, I gave you every chance to debate. Bye. Block. There was no chance. It was complete nonsense. I'm sorry. Caleb is full of shit. He's pushing anti-Semitic theories, anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. He's deliberately rejecting materialism. He's deliberately rejecting revolutionary science. He's deliberately rejecting reaching the masses on a rational, scientific, and class-based level. Instead, he's just saying Jesus Bible, American flag. But I think you get the point by now. And I know many of you are just going to be angry and leave a hateful comment and not actually refute anything I'm saying, because that's generally how internet debate actually works. It's sickening when people say, oh, he's doing something IRL and that's what counts. No, bastardizing Marxism, building a religious cult, isn't doing something positive IRL. That's the opposite. It's doing something terrible IRL. If you can sing the Star Spangled Banner right next and do all of the God bless America nonsense right next to the Internationale, which says, away with all superstitions, which is literally referring to religion, you clearly have a cognitive dissonance that makes you unable to understand anything. So please keep that in mind, and maybe this can force some people to think. Because Galen Maupin doesn't think you're capable of it. He thinks he could just dangle the flag and the Bible in front of you and then push essentially racism. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.